Time to Shine Today podcast, Varsity Squad. This is Scott Ferguson, and thank you so much for tuning in for an episode that I am super blessed and stoked to bring you. A good friend of mine, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, resides down in the kind of black belt haven down in Brazil. And my good friend Carlos Bergtante, also a fellow Filipino, we had just a super fun conversation. His backstory is absolutely amazing. Really overcoming the odds, moving forward and passing it on and sending that elevator down to help others level up. He spoke a very dark background. And again, he moved me with it, but just to hear his persistence and consistency to really help himself go to the next level, find his version of happiness, it was just above reproach, and how he helps others do it as well. So if you don't mind, smash the like button or actually share this with somebody that is in need of a really leveled up conversation, because he does not hold back. That's all I can say. So without further ado, break out your notebook, sit back and relax, because here comes my really good friend and coach, Carlos Bergante. Let's love. Time to Shine Today podcast, Varsity Squad. This is Scott Ferguson, and I am super stoked because I got my guy here, Carlos Bergante. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and I know I've been drowned on the mats, and it kind of sucks. And my guy here, Carlos, would probably drown me in minutes. And someone that I immensely respect. He's a coach. He's 46 years old. I know he doesn't look like it. So we're a couple Generation Xers, me 51 and him 46, here rocking the mic. He had a really rough upbringing, abused mentally and physically by his father, has been in and out of incarceration from his late teens through his early 20s. He's had to pull himself out of rock bottom several times, had to overcome many addictions and limiting beliefs in his life, in his journey, and he's learned to love serving others and which led him to become a mindset and men's life coach. He moved to Brazil, which is like the hotbed of BJJ, hence Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, to pursue his passion. He's a 2-stripe Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So again, he's pretty much a badass. And Carlos, thank you so much for coming on. Please introduce yourself to Time to Shine Today podcast, Varsity Squad. But first, what's your favorite color and why?
Geez, I would say the mixture between black and red.
Okay. Like it's like Johnny Walker Scotch, man. I love it, bro. So I've got to get to the roots, man. I heard troubled youth, incarceration. Off mic, you shared a lot about your awesome history with how your family origins came. But then we kind of moved into, this is probably a little bit more of a darker area. I'd like to kind of plant this seed and see how you kind of work through this and then work your way out and use what your experience is to help others level up.
Sure. I'm sorry, what was the question?
The question is, I want the roots, brother. I want the roots of your story, my guy.
Yeah. Oh, first of all, thank you for that awesome intro. You covered a lot there. And so the roots to my story, right? The roots to my story are that, geez, I don't know, where do I start? I'm originally from Virginia, the Virginia Beach area. So I'll go to where everything, just the meat and potatoes. So my father, he wasn't the best father figure growing up. He learned what he learned from his father, but he was like the intro said, he was very physically and mentally abusive to myself, my siblings, and my mother. And eventually my mom and him split apart when I was in my early teens, right? Okay. And when they split apart, I did not have any male role model there. And also the male role that I did have was my father. So naturally, that's this path I started to take. I started to get heavy into drugs and alcohol at a very young age. And I started to step into the same footsteps as my father. With drugs and alcohol came theft, stealing, bullying, these things throughout my early teens and into my early adulthood, right? And so that's where all the trouble and basically I was just digging a hole for myself. This analogy of just digging a hole for myself. So when I put it this way, by the time before I was even 21, I had 3 DUIs already.
Ouch,
right?
Okay.
Yeah. And so I had other charges. So I was looking at doing a really long length of time because the 3 strike rule, driving a car, getting hit and runs, and just
Yeah.
theft and all these things. So I was looking at doing a grip of time during this age before I was even 21. And I just got tired of the life that I was living. And this analogy of me growing up and being just like my father, right?
Mm.
So this last stench in jail, I decided, what, it's time for me to really make some kind of change in life, right? I ended up getting my GED, General
Yeah.
Education Diploma, while I was
Yeah.
incarcerated. I went through a really strict drug and alcohol addiction therapy program while I was incarcerated. This was all part of the deal because I was so young at the
Mm.
time. This was all part of the deal to reduce my sentence so that I can get out, right? And not serve this
Nice. Yeah.
long length of time. Obviously, I was under some kind of probation there after I got out to make sure I was a good citizen.
Yeah.
And so I completed all of this, and this was kind of like the changing point, getting my education, getting rid of the addictions to drug and alcohol and the vices.
Yeah.
And obviously there were some ups and downs after that,
Yeah.
but this was like the first shovel of dirt into this big
Yeah.
hole that I had dug for myself in the past,
Right.
right? And with that being said, not having this male role model and not having my father in my life in my teens and things like that, I got into one of my first relationships, which was with a college exchange student. And then 9/11 happened. So
Mm.
she could not renew her visa. So
Oh,
she got sent back to the Philippines. And
really?
we were doing the long distance relationship for a while.
Yeah.
And I just like, I can't do this long. So I decided to get rid of everything in the United States, sell everything, and basically go there and be with her and start a life with her, right?
Okay.
And so I did that. And at the time, call centers were booming there in the Philippines, right? So I
Yeah.
took everything and invested in trying to open up a call center there and married her. Come to find out that she wasn't honest with me. She was cheating on me at the
Sure.
time, right?
Right.
And that was another low point in my life because I left everything that I knew to be there with her. I also I invested everything into my business, which because of my relationship and also because I wasn't taking care of my health, I stopped training jujitsu. I was overweight and fat, was drinking again, and had my drug addiction problem there in the Philippines.
Mm.
And I was smoking at the same time. And I think I was like 50, 60 pounds overweight at the time.
Wow.
So it wasn't healthy, was my business was failing and my relationship was failing. So this was a very low point, another low point in my life. Had a lot of suicidal thoughts and things like that. And so what got me out of that one was a friend of mine handed me this Tony Robbins CD when
Mm.
CDs were the thing at the time,
Yeah.
right? Kind of are now. But and it was one of my formal introductions to basically personal development was
Nice.
this Tony or Anthony Robbins CD.
Yeah.
And basically it was a visualization exercise on here, right? And I'll never forget it because I was sitting at a coffee shop there and he knew, this particular friend of mine knew how down I was and everything that I went through. He's like, man, listen to this, man, right? Just do the exercises on this. And at
Mm.
the time I had $500 in my bank account, right? And I was contemplating on calling my mother up and saying, hey, I'm going to need help with a plane ticket to fly back to the United States. I'm going to need my old room back so that I can start my life all
Sure.
over again because my marriage failed and all of this. And he was like, man, just listen to the CD. So I was there like contemplating. I listened to it and I did the exercises. And one of the exercises was a visualization exercise of where you just write down things that you want in your life, even if they're not visible right now, even if you
Right.
feel like you cannot accomplish these
Yeah.
things. So I wrote down like a notebook, like 2 pages. It must have been like 50 or 60 things of things that I wanted to do, right, in my life. And there were things that I didn't think I could accomplish. Like I wanted to go to Brazil, train with the Gracies, and get my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Right.
That's awesome.
I
Right.
wanted to find a job, and this was like 20 years ago. I wanted to find a job or a company that I could work for that would let me work remotely, so I could travel more. Right. And this is
Nice.
when working remotely wasn't really the thing. It was very rare. I wanted to find a woman and find love in my life and have kids and be a father and a husband,
Yeah.
right? And so those were some of my top things, right, that I had listed there. And
Right.
at the time, man, I'm 60 pounds overweight, smoking, drink,
Yeah.
broke, unemployed, don't have a
Sure.
business. And so I was just wrote this down. And I wouldn't say it happened overnight,
Yeah.
but just getting those thoughts and those things out of my mind and creating this vision on my mind and putting it on paper.
Yeah, dude.
That
Yeah.
is that's like putting it out in the universe. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's really coming out. And so I'm actually able to see these things,
Yes.
right? And so I started taking steps towards these things. And lo and behold, right? I read a Tim Ferriss book, The 4 Hour Work Week, the
Yeah.
very first series that came out, and
Hmm.
found out like, hey, it is possible to work remotely. It is possible to get people to work remotely and have this life. And so I started applying for companies in the United States to say, hey, I want to utilize my skills in IT that I know
Hmm.
to to work for you remotely, and must apply to hundreds and hundreds of companies. And
Hmm.
finally one answer say, yeah, let me give you a try. Did the online interview and said, okay, let's go. I like you. We'll hire you. You can work 100% remotely. Again,
Nice.
it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so packed my bags up, right? I had a suitcase with some clothes and my laptop and my bag, and just really simplified my life. And so I started traveling. I traveled all around Asia, started training jujitsu again,
Mm.
lived in Thailand for a year, and that's where I met a a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt there. He was one of the only ones in Asia
Mm.
that was there in Thailand at Phuket Muay Thai, and it was very small at the time. It's a very famous
He's
facility
big
now, but
now.
when I
Yeah.
went there,
Yeah.
it was very small. But he was there. His name is Tony Eduardo. He was one of the first black belts to go there
Okay.
to help train the Muay Thai fighters how to fight on the ground. Because
Ground. Yeah.
at the time, MMA was just blowing up,
Hmm.
right? And you needed to have a ground game to be able to survive
Right.
in MMA. So he was there teaching the Muay Thai fighters and the stand-up guys how
Yeah.
to
Get it
grapple
done.
and
Right.
yeah. And so I found out like he was one of the only ones there. So hey, I'm working remote. Let me go there, live in Thailand for a little bit, train with this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, maybe do some stand-up there too.
Hmm.
And so I ended up moving there, living there with
While you're working remotely too, right?
while I'm working remotely.
Okay.
I'm staying right next to the camp, training every day.
Yeah. Getting it done.
And
Sure. Yeah.
yeah, and then one day Tony is like, "Hey man, what are you doing here in Thailand? You work remotely and things like that." He's like, "Man, I'm here training. I want to train with you. You're the only Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt here in Asia."
Right.
And he's like, "Man, I really noticed that you're all into the Jiu-Jitsu classes."
Hmm.
And yeah, I was attending the MMA classes
Yeah.
and the Muay Thai class, but I was really there in the Jiu-Jitsu class. This is where I love to be at. And I was like, yeah, man, eventually I want to get my black belt in jiu-jitsu. And he was like, hey, I'm going back to Brazil next month. Why don't you come there? There's my invite. There's that second
Yeah.
thing on my list.
Yeah.
Right. So
Do that. Hell yeah.
yeah, I was like, man, let's do that. So he ended up going there. I stayed a couple more months and I kind of like made my way down there. I didn't go right away, but I knew he was going back. He was there. I had a friend there now. I still traveled around Asia. I saw different places, lived there, lived in different places for a couple months at a time, training at different facilities. So I met a lot of friends. And
Sure.
when you train with guys and you're trying to rip each other's heads off, you just become instant buddies. So I made a lot of good friends there. Made my way down through Central America and then into South America, just training at different places, staying at
Hmm.
months at a time at different places. Met a lot of good
You're
guys.
still doing the IT work, right?
Still doing the remote
Okay.
IT work. And then I made my way to Brazil and trained with Tony. And I didn't go directly where Tony was at. He's from this place called Florianopolis,
Okay.
in a state called Santa Catarina, which is a state further south. I wanted to go where jiu-jitsu first started,
Hmm.
right, where it's famous from, which is Rio de Janeiro,
Sure.
right? And also I wanted to train with the Gracies, which
Right. Right.
were over there, right? Like them.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I went there. I trained at Gracie Baja for a little bit, and
Nice.
I trained at Gracie Humaita
Mm.
there for a little bit too. But the thing is, I was there and I was supposed to stay there for a couple months, and I was living there with a buddy. The thing is, like, it is not really the safest place if you're not from there and you don't speak
Right.
Portuguese, right?
Right.
And I was constantly just looking over my back, checking of you're just
Sure.
waiting to get robbed,
Right.
basically.
Right.
You can't go out at night and be walking the street and speaking English right away. You're gonna get
Sure.
robbed. And so I ended up going to other parts of Brazil. I went to Sao Paulo, trained there for a little bit.
Mm.
Big city, wasn't my
Yeah.
thing. I finally made my way down to go visit Tony in this island. It's an island off the southern coast of Brazil called Florianopolis,
Hmm.
right? And I came here, and it was like I couldn't even believe I was in Brazil. Like it's totally different. But it's an island off the southern coast of Brazil, and it's considered the Hawaii of South America,
Okay.
right? Even the football team here, the name of the football team is called Avaí, and translated into English, that means Hawaiian, right? Like it's very beautiful.
Right.
And so I came here, was training here. The academies here, I started training at was Hillian Gracie.
Mhm.
Hillian Gracie is founded the academy here, and so was training here. And yeah, I ended up getting my purple belt, my brown belt, and my black belt in 2015 here in Brazil.
Beautiful.
And yeah, and I met my wife here in Brazil. Met my wife here, and to make a long story short, I did not still not know how to be a man or a husband or a father because I
Sure.
didn't have that role model, right? Growing up. So I found myself in this same spot I was many years ago of on the verge of being on divorce because I just didn't know how to be this person, right?
Mm. Your identity
And
wasn't quite set into that yet.
yeah, and I just didn't have that father role model. I didn't know how to be this person.
Right.
I mean, I didn't get the manual how to be a father and a husband. I don't know. If
Right.
anybody got that
Did
manual,
this
please send it
did
to me.
did Denise
Right?
help you out with that?
Well, no, she couldn't. I mean, she
Yeah.
doesn't know how to be a man or a husband either, right? So I
There
do
you
a
go.
lot of internal work on myself, right? So I joined a lot of men's groups.
Sure.
I got a coach, got a therapist, and started to do a lot of internal work on myself, on finding this man that I can admire, finding
Uh,
this husband that I can admire, right? And in this work on working on myself and working on my marriage and just being a better man and a father and a husband, obviously it's kind of like the jujitsu mats. They see you elevate from a white belt to a black belt, and other people ask you for advice, ask you for help, right? Because you're ahead of them. So
yes.
other men and other people started to see this in me and asking me for help with their marriage or how to get them unstuck in their life or how can they pursue their goals. And so this is where I go into the coaching aspect of it. So I started teaching the things that I learned. And a lot of my philosophy when I coach is based on jujitsu philosophy. Because you can relate a lot of the analogies that I use, that I'm going to use here as well too, is based on what I learn on the mats. Because what happens on the mats can so easily be
Jiu-jitsu is
translated
life.
into life.
Absolutely.
Jujitsu is life,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So with that being said, when you don't know how to do or how to become or how to get to that certain level, you find people that are at that level. If you
Yeah.
start up as a white belt and you want to be a black belt, you start hanging around people that are higher than you and you start
Emulating.
asking
There you
questions.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
And so this is exactly what happened. Not saying I'm a black belt as being a husband or a father
Sure.
or a man, but I was at another level already. And so people that were coming in that were having the same problems that I was having started asking me for help. And of course I helped. And this is where my coaching career came. I
Yeah.
found out like, hey, I really love this. I'm very passionate about helping people with their problems of where I was at before and helping them not have the same pain or have to showing them maybe another way to get through this obstacle that they're having in their life.
Wow.
Right. And so,
So let me ask you,
uh,
Carlos, then
yeah,
what do you feel makes a great coach?
I feel what makes a really great coach is not the certifications, is not the courses. I mean, that definitely adds to it.
Sure.
That,
What
that
makes
gives
one?
gives you a framing.
Yeah.
I think it's the experience in life that you have gone through. Right.
Okay.
I think helping out somebody that has gone through what you've went through and you've learned from this and using your experience of when you went through that
Mhm.
help that person. So I think that is very important. And I see
Love
that
it.
in jujitsu as well too. Like how do
Sure.
you become a good black belt?
Yeah.
Yeah, you hang
Right.
around the best black belts. You hang around those people because they have already been through what you went through as a white belt, blue belt, purple belt.
You know what I love about what you're saying is that you live kind of a plus equals minus, where what I mean by that is as a coach, there's people that I emulate that I really look up to. I had the vision. I speak on stage now. Okay. So I had that vision and I made that happen. Now, like I look at people, the plus side is, hey, people I want to emulate, right? People I want to get to. The equal side is like me and you. Hey, we rap, we bounce stuff off each other. And then we send the elevator down to people that want to get up to where we are. So all I'm hearing is you're living that plus equals minus life. That's freaking fantastic. So let me ask you something then. Maybe during discovery discussion with a client, they haven't hired you yet. They're coming into you. What is some of your secret sauce to help them really start to recognize that blind spot that's holding them back?
Well, what I like to do is when I first get on the discovery call with a client, I want to find out where they're at right now,
Okay.
right? Where they're at right now in life, right? And then then I start listening down and just getting a list of all the things of where they're at right now in life, all the
Right.
problems, all the challenges they're at specifically, right?
Yeah.
Then I find out what would they like to experience instead of where they're at right now, right? What would they like to? This is a very important question I have. What would you like to experience instead of all these things that's happening to you right now? That whole list, right? And so they start telling me all the things they would like to experience in life that they would have right now in their relationship, in their professional life, in their personal life, blah, 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 blah. Right. So once I find out where they're at right now and what they would like to experience instead of what's happening right now, then there's kind of that vision of where they want to be.
Yeah.
And so everything that's in the middle there,
that's the performance gap. That's the performance gap, right? That's the performance gap. They got to perform within that gap to get there. I love your video that you put out about, hey man, if you like, I'm 51. I am so freaking stoked to meet the 55-year-old Scott Ferguson. So stoked to meet him, right? And I love that video you put out. Say, hey, that guy 10 years out. Who do you want to be? How do you want that person to be? Dude, when I go to heaven, that's where I feel I'm going. I'm going to actually, the Scott that I was meant to be is going to show up and say, thank you for doing that. I don't want to show up less than. And I love that you're really leveling people up with that. So let me ask you this then. When you maybe you're in the discovery, you're really finding out that performance gap and getting that plan lined up for them. Is there any good question that you wish they would ask you, but never do?
That's a good question. And I would say if I find out this gap for them, right? I would like them to ask me how can I fill this gap? How can I fill this gap?
My man,
right?
Love that.
How can I fill the gap? Because then when they say that, that means like, hey, I'm in it. I want to solve this problem.
They want it. They're open. They're coachable and everything. That's freaking awesome, man. Because sometimes I'll sit in discovery sessions and be like, I'm not the right horse for this course. I'm not the right coach for them. I'm saying that's where I'll maybe say, hey, Carlos, I think you're a better fit for them. Because I set my ego aside because I can't help them in that performance gap from where they are to where they want to get. So I love that you do that. You want them to ask you what's in there. So let me ask you something. Have you seen the movie Back to the Future?
Yes, okay. I have the first one. It's been a while.
It's been a minute, right? It'll be 40 years old, I think, next year. So let's get in that DeLorean with Marty McFly, man. Let's go back to the Double Deuce, the 22-year-old Carlos, which you're going through some stuff. What kind of knowledge nuggets might you drop on the 22-year-old Carlos? Not to change anything, because part of what your journey has made you, right? But to maybe help them shorten a learning curve, blast through, level up, maybe just a little bit quicker. What might you tell him?
So I'm going to bring it back to jiu-jitsu philosophy.
That's fine, man. Right? I'm good with that.
Right? Because there's so much knowledge and I'm going to back. So we go back to the 22-year-old Carlos, right?
Yeah. What are you telling him?
I would tell him, hey, find the people that you want to emulate. Find those people that you want, right?
Yeah.
And surround yourself with those people, right?
Yes.
And also I would tell him consistency is the key to everything. Yes. Just consistently do those things that you need to do to level up, right? It's
Love
consistency. Consistency.
Dude, that is so jujitsu, because it's like I coach from inch by inch, it's a cinch. By the yard, it's hard. Everybody wants this shit now, right? But if you break that down, short steps, long visions, like when I first learned an arm bar long, I was like, okay, I'm not switching hips. I'm just like look like I'm flopping all over the place. But I remember my coach is just like, Ferg, just break it down, slow, pull the head, lock the arm, get the top lock on, and everything's inch by inch. And I love that you talked to him about, you're saying that, and to emulate the people that you want to get to. So how do you want your dash remembered? that little line in between your incarnation date and your expiration date, your life date and your death date. Hopefully it's way down the road, young man, but how do you want Carlos's dash remembered, brother?
First thing that comes to my head is like, I really want to leave a legacy, like that dash.
I knew that L word was coming, bro. I knew it was. Describe that legacy, brother. How does that legacy work? How does it look to you?
Well, it looks like I want to be a person who leaves a legacy of inspiration and overcoming, right?
Yeah.
Inspiration and overcoming whatever obstacles or whatever challenges happen in your life, right? And that's the dash right there, because that's what all that dash is right there.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's obstacles, it's challenges in life, right? And it's really up to you of where you want to stop. But I see myself as that's part of life is the ups and downs, the hills and valleys, right? And you're gonna in that dash, that's what it's all about. So you got to be able to be persistent.
Yes.
You got to be able to overcome those, right? And so that's where I see that dash at. I look at challenges and obstacles like that. Those are where all the lessons happen.
Yeah.
Just like in jujitsu, right?
Dude.
Just like in jujitsu, man. Like you're not gonna learn anything if you're the best guy in the room.
Right.
You got to get in a room where you're getting submitted all the time.
All day.
You know? All day. That's why we have a competition class, because you go in there
the Pahada. Right?
You're Bojada. There you go. Yeah, you're in there with like 20 other black belts. They're gonna wipe the floor with you.
Dude, all day. Yep.
And then so you walk out of there and you're like, man, like you learned so much. So it's all those challenges and those lessons. That's that dash.
Yeah,
right? So
I love it. And you're enjoying that journey, brother. I see it in your eyes and I hear it from you. Let me ask something, Carlos, then.
Sure.
If you were to know Carlos, if you were to really know me, what might you say? Like that question, like if you really knew me, you would know this. So say that to yourself. What would we really know about you? If we really knew you.
If you really knew me, you would know that I'm a risk taker and that I'm very persistent.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Love that, dude. You have that faith. I'm going to go Napoleon Hill on you now, right? But you have that faith. You back that faith with a persistence that doesn't recognize failure, right? You don't quit.
Yeah. Well, I recognize failure, but failure is the process to success. It's learning.
Dude. My coach, Eric Alquin, and his wife, Tubby Alquin, they're both fighting. Eric's the MMA champion of cage, and Tubby's ranked number 3 in flow wrestling or flow grappling. And they say, you don't lose, Fergie. You either win or learn. And you just learn from it, man. And I love that. So what do you think, Carlos, people misunderstand about you the most?
Wow, Scott, that's a really good question. What would people misunderstand about me? Geez, I'm drawing a blank, to be honest with you.
You seem I'm not going to answer for you, Carlos, but you seem like such an open book, dude. You're very transparent. You're one of the most transparent interviews I've ever had. And this is over 500 interviews soon. I'm saying this is, I'm glad you can't answer that because you're an open book. I'm sure there's a savage in there because you look so happy and I'm saying, but dude, I don't think you want to go there to that side, especially with your background, your backstory, and obviously your training too. But hey, we come back to that one. But then, Carlos, what is your definition of a life well lived?
A life well lived is a life where life happens through you, right? Ooh. And that you are
unpack that. What do you mean by that?
Like, okay, a lot of people live a life where life is just happening to them, right? Where they're sitting around and they're living reactively, right? And when it's happening through you, you're making things happen with your actions, right? And you're living every moment, every day intentionally, right? And so that is a life well lived, where you're actually taking intentional steps towards life.
Dude, that is strong, Carlos. That is amazing, bro. That is awesome. Time to Shine Today podcast Varsity Squad. We are back, and Carlos, you and I will meet up one day, man. I'm gonna come down and visit you, brother, one day. I actually have some friends. Actually, the person that does all my video stuff lives in Brazil. So me and Susan are looking to try to kind of make a trip down there. But We'll probably sit down, have a brain grenade or a soda or a kava or something and talk about each one of these questions at length. But today, you have 5 seconds with no explanations, and they can all be answered that way. You ready to level up?
Yeah, I'm ready to level up always.
Let's go. All right, Carlos, what is the best leveling up advice you've ever received?
Surround yourself with people that are already where you want to be in life.
Beautiful. Share one of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
Geez, there's so many, but I would say meditation.
Beautiful. So you see me kind of walking down the street, or maybe we meet up at an event or something, man. You'll be like, man, Fergie looks like he's in his doldrums a little bit. What book might you hand me to level me up?
Well, I'm reading this book right now, and it's a really level up. It's by Rudolf Steiner, and it is called the Way of Initiation.
Gotcha. Donnie, put that in the show notes. Carlos, what's your most commonly used emoji?
I would say the arm flex.
Gotcha. Nicknames growing up?
Kaloy.
Kaloy. I love it.
Typical Filipino nickname.
So what is any hidden talent or superpower that you have that nobody really knows about until now?
Besides jiu-jitsu, man, I would say it's my intuition.
Beautiful. Awesome. Chess, checkers, or Monopoly?
Chess.
I figure freaking black belts all are chess players too. So headline for your life.
The Intentional Life.
Love it, man. Go to ice cream flavor.
Oh, pistachio.
Beautiful. There's a sandwich named the Kaloy. What's on that sandwich? Build it for me.
Rye bread, mozzarella cheese, tomato, lettuce, onions, and I would like a big piece of avocado on there.
Oh, nice, man.
With seeds and things like that. So
beautiful.
I'm plant-based, so that would be
no problem, man. I love that, brother. Love it. Favorite charity and or organization you like to give your time or money to?
What there's one I can't think of the name off the top of my head right now, but he came up with that movie a couple months ago. Tim, help me out here.
With Jim Caviezel in it about I know what you're talking about.
With the children, right?
Yeah, put that in the show notes, Donnie. Perfect. All right, Carlos, last question, but what's the best decade of music? 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s?
90s.
Love it. All right, my man. So, Carlos, how can we find you, brother?
So everything's on my website. And
what's that website, Carlos?
It is everythingIsInternalWork.com. Right.
Got it.
And also Facebook and Instagram. I'm very, very active on Facebook. Carlos Bergante, and same thing on
Squad. Check out his stories on there and check out his Facebook. I've been following him on Facebook since I've reached out to him quite a bit ago about fears and limiting beliefs that he's literally just dropped. And that's something I even picked up a step from him today that helped me out with a coaching client that I was kind of in a blind spot about. So thank you, Carlos. But also, Squad, I'm going to offer a free half-hour discussion with Carlos. Whatever he charges, he can charge me. So the first person that puts Kaloy, and I'm just going to spell it Coloy, first person that puts that, I don't care anywhere, I'm going to give you a free half hour of power with Carlos, and he can just build time to shine today, because I want to get as many people in front of my good guy here as possible. And Carlos, and again, if you put that in LinkedIn, if you put it in Pinterest, if you put it, I don't care where it's at, you can text it to 561-440-3830. Put Kaloy in there, and I'll be happy to pay Carlos for a half hour of his time. And Carlos, if you don't mind, please leave us with one last knowledge nugget we can take with us, internalize, and take action on.
Yes. Well, I'm gonna base it off my website here. Everything is internal work, guys, right? Everything that you want externally happens internally first, right? So you have to work on the internal part first before you can get anything externally.
I love that. And Squad, we just had a fantastic conversation with somebody I immensely respect, not just because he's a BJJ black belt, because he's just an awesome human being. He grew up with a negative father figure, really no father figure after his teenage years, mentally, physically abused, broken family. Again, no male role model. Took the bad path. He dug a hole, right? He decided, hey, I'm going to change my life, get my GED, get some therapy. I'm going to go to the Philippines. Guess what? Failed again. But when he failed forward. He had a friend hand him a book by TR that really started putting his visions on paper. Next thing, he's in Thailand, right? He's going there and he's working remotely. Guess what? A Gracie ended up saying, hey, come to Brazil. He manifested the shit because he got it on paper. Get it in ink. Get it out in front of you. He continues to work on himself, right? And when people start seeing you keep showing up, guess what? Those other people that show up after you are going to look to you for help. And that's what Carlos did. He sent that elevator down to people. He really reminds us that life experiences allow you to pass on those experiences so others can shorten their performance gap, right? And that's what Carlos does. He's a coach that I really feel listens with his neck, not just with his ears. He really leans in to his clients, and he really listens to his clients to help them fill that performance gap. He wants you to find people to emulate and surround yourselves with them, because organically you're going to become them, because you're going to start taking on their mannerisms. You're going to start really hearing what they say, talking like them, eating like them, rolling on the mats like them. And he wants you to understand that all breeds from consistency. It's the key to everything. Inch by inch, it's a cinch. By the yard, it's hard. He's a person, Carlos, that's leaving a legacy. And if I can use a baseball metaphor, he's going to slide across home plate, literally bumped and bruised from his past, but he's going to know that he is planting trees he's never going to sit in the shade of. That's all I can say. This dude's went through stuff. He does things for the intention, not the attention, because he reminded us to live intentionally. Live not reactively. Take responsibilities for your actions and listen to people to respond and not react. And lastly, everything is internal work. Everything that's on the outside comes from the inside. That's what my good friend Carlos does. Again, someone I immensely respect. He levels up his health. He levels up his wealth. He's earned his varsity squad letter here at Time to Shine today, brother. Thank you so much for coming on, Carlos. I legitimately love your guts, brother.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate this. This was a great podcast. Thank you so much.
Awesome, brother. We'll chat soon.